Good morning, I'm Chris Fox. Welcome to the third video in the Launch to Market series, which is chronicling the launch of my novel, Destroyer. It's been a very busy week. I was at the Smarter Artist Summit, and you're going to hear all about that in this video. I also had kind of a big snafu. I got some egg on my face, so you'll hear about one of the issues that can crop up when you're publishing as quickly as I do. And then we're also going to do a little bit of QA, and of course the #1 request I've gotten since the launch is a little bit of info on how my Facebook ads are performing. So it's going to be kind of a long video, so I'm just going to jump right into it. So most of you watching these videos have read at least one of my books by this point. 5,000 words per hour is kind of the core of my publishing methodology. It's write really quickly. And with Destroyer, I sort of ratcheted that up to include the editing process going very quickly as well. So I did a lot less editing on this book than I've done on any of my other books. I put it out way more quickly. And my gamble is that that lack of proofing wouldn't really damage the quality. And for the most part, it didn't. But I got the manuscript back from Tammy, my line editor, and I went through her edits and I integrated them. And then, after doing all that work, I wrote a new epilogue because the one person who had read this book, another sci-fi author by the name of Richard Fox, no relation, had said, it's kind of an abrupt ending and that, maybe fans wouldn't be as okay with it. And I realized that there was kind of a piece missing, so I added a new last chapter. But I didn't have anyone look at that except for myself. So I wrote it, I edited it once, I waited a day, and then I read through for typos, and then I published it. And in that last chapter, I used the wrong name. So the character that should have been present in that chapter, every instance where his name is used, another character's name was substituted. And it's pretty jarring for readers. So that's present in a couple of reviews already. I had probably 50 plus emails telling me, hey, Chris, did you know this was happening? So definitely a major gaffe and proof that if you publish very quickly, you are going to cut some corners. There are going to be problems. But here's the takeaway from that. Would I do anything differently? No, I would not. Most people were fine with it. Everyone was very nice. Even the reviews that pointed out the error were still a 3-star and a 4-star. So people were kind about it. And I was able to quickly fix it. Just a reminder, we're no longer in traditional publishing. We're kind of in the tech world now. You have the ability to rev your book, revise, it's a software term, just like you would any application. So when you find a bug, you can just fix it. And that's exactly what I did. I uploaded a new version as soon as it became clear what the problem was. And that was propagating out to all the new customers that buy the book. So from here forward, anyone purchasing that book is going to get the corrected version. And it wasn't really that big of a deal. I mean, it's embarrassing. I was definitely embarrassed, but I still think it's worth doing what I'm doing. I'm still very happy with this fast writing, rapid publishing schedule. And the book's doing far better than I could have expected, which we'll talk about in the recap. So, let that be, I guess, kind of a lesson. If you're going to publish as quickly as I am, there is a cost to that. And this is a very tangible demonstration of what that cost is. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Smarter Artist Summit that I attended last week. So that led to one fewer video than usual because I was quite busy. I flew from San Francisco, California to Austin, Texas for a 2-day event where quite a few big names in indie publishing were speaking. Everybody from Nick Stevenson to Joanna Penn. And this was hosted by Johnny, Sean, and Dave, the self-publishing podcast guys. So while I was out there, I got a chance to meet quite a few people that I know online from various author communities face to face. And that really helped. But the big takeaway from this conference was not just the networking, which was sort of what I expected. I thought going to an event like this, the big benefit was going to be networking. But I've heard a lot of these speakers elsewhere, so I probably won't learn a ton. Boy, was I wrong. Every presentation taught me at least one takeaway. People like Julia Kent gave me like 2 or 3 big pieces to think about in my marketing that are really going to change the way I do things going forward. Andre, the mailing list segmentation and autoresponder sequence information that they gave us in this summit was incredible. So it will be hosted again next year. I highly recommend considering going. There's only 150 spots, so it'll probably fill up pretty quick when they open it up. But I definitely plan to go again. I would love a chance to speak. Maybe I'll find a way to make that happen. But whether I do or don't, it was so nice to get to meet so many of the people that I know from various other platforms. I mean, there were some pretty big names there, and it kind of humanized them in the same way when I first met Brandon Sanderson. I looked at this guy and said, "Hey, he's just a normal human being. Maybe I can be an author too." I met some of these big names and said, you know what, the success they have, that's the kind of success that I want. And I think I can achieve that this year. So I came away from that summit sick. I'm heavily medicated on Dayquil. And yet, even though I'm sick, I have so much energy. I feel like I can conquer the world. It really pumped me up. And it was hard being at the summit. The vast majority of people were introverts. You could tell that the hosts knew that was the case. They set up an area that overlooked the main room that was for introverts only. So what you would do is when you got to a point where you just couldn't handle being around that crowd of people, you headed upstairs and you sat on this little couch and looked down over the rest of the people. And those few people that were up there with you were quiet. So they gave us a space to recharge, and that helped because you could tell a lot of people were really struggling to come out of that inner shell because we're writers, we're all introverts. But the process, the learning, everything that I picked up at this summit was amazing. I can't wait to go back next year, and it's got me fired up. So that's a little bit about the summit. I could probably go on, for hours about it. I do want to say thank you to Amy for putting it on. This woman is amazing, and we clapped about 140 times for her because she did such an amazing job orchestrating this whole thing. So if you have a chance to go next year, you should definitely do it. So given the length, I'm only going to do a couple of questions, especially since one of the questions is rather lengthy and somewhat amusing as well. So I'm going to read it to you. This is the extent of the email. Name has been removed. Okay, so this is just cheating. You're building your mailing list saying, follow me, this is the way to sell a zillion copies, and go on all the writing podcasts saying, I know how to do this, buy my nonfiction books to learn how you can too. And then you use that very same mailing list audience to make it happen for you, something which none of your nonfiction customers have access to. So I received a couple variations of this, basically people saying, hey, isn't telling the list that is watching this video to buy the book sort of cheating? Doesn't that artificially inflate my success? And to that, I have a couple of things to point out. First, any lever you have that you can pull for your book marketing launch, you should do. I have to pay rent. I'm definitely not going to self-sabotage a launch and not use every tool at my disposal to make that book successful, just so my test is a little bit more pure. But at the same time, I acknowledge that my test isn't the same as what you might be able to do if you're a first-time author. If you don't have a platform, your launch is going to be a little bit harder. You'll be where I was 14 months ago when I put out my very first novel. And that's okay. The takeaway from this should be A, that it's possible to write a book that is good very quickly, and B, that you can push it up the charts. You may not push it up as high on the charts as I do because I have a little bit larger platform, but you can still push it up there and still have the Amazon algorithms pick it up and start peddling it for you. So just because you don't have a huge mailing list right now and maybe you don't have much of a web presence doesn't mean you can't do this. The answer that I gave to the person who sent me this email was, I could have advertised on book advertising sites to simulate that mailing list. So instead of saying to you guys, hey, would you mind picking up a copy of this book? I could have simply booked an ENT or, tried for dozens of other smaller sites that would have gotten me some sales. So there are levers you can pull as a new author doing this game. And I don't think that what we're seeing here, this demonstration with Destroyer, is invalidated because I have a platform. So I don't think it's cheating, especially since I'm being totally upfront and honest about everything that I'm doing. I mean, I'm quite clear about every tactic that I use and why I'm using it. So that's my stance on it. I don't feel like it's cheating. If you do, I'm sorry. Second question is, what is sticky? So what they meant by this is what makes a book sticky on Amazon. I've used that term a couple of times. And what I mean by sticky is that it will hold its rank without you having to do anything. So you're going to do your big push, it's going to get noticed by the algorithms, and it's going to kind of float along and maybe, start dipping down a little bit, but eventually it's going to find an equilibrium where it stays around that rank for at least a month without you directly pushing it. And this is generally organic visibility from also bots and also Amazon occasionally emailing people to say, hey, this book exists. You liked book A, maybe you'll also like this new book, Destroyer by Chris Fox. So that's what I mean by sticky, and that really is the goal of writing to market. Try to write a book that will be sticky so that when people have finished up whatever book they're reading and they're browsing through books that are like it, Amazon's going to put your book in front of them. They're going to buy it and like it because it's similar to what they have read that is like your book. So that's it for the Q&A section. I'm going to go ahead and dive into Facebook ads. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the basics of setting up Facebook ads. Mark Dawson has a wonderful free 3-part video series that'll teach you the basics of how to do Facebook ads. I'm just going to talk largely about performance, so how those ads did. So I set up 3 different campaigns. I have military, sci-fi, space opera, that's one audience, Mass Effect audience, and StarCraft audience. Now, I knew these latter 2 were going to be taking a big chance because I wasn't directly targeting readers. I was targeting players of video games that were similar to these books. And while I added a caveat, you can change an ad so that it also requires something. So I said people who like StarCraft and read fiction, people who like Mass Effect and like novels. So those were the audience that I put together for this, sort of as a test. But you'll also notice that both of these have been turned off. And that's because the cost per click on both was extremely high. You want this as low as possible because you're paying that amount every time somebody clicks on it. So these 2 just were not performing. I turned them off. And then I focused mainly on this ad set here because this one was performing. You can see it's got a much lower cost per click. And part of how I achieve that is by turning off one of the ad sets. So I have this group down here. This is my ad set, which contains 3 ads. And each of these 3 ads has one of the covers from one of the books. So I use different artwork for each. And you can see that each one performed very differently. So this third one, the cover of Eradication, was by far the least popular. It was much more expensive per click, and so I turned it off. So the same dollar amount, instead of being spread amongst all 3, is now just these 2, and that's why the performance has gone up so much. So now I've learned what artwork my audience likes and what ad sets are performing. I'm going to go ahead and make other ads for different purposes. So this one was trying to get straight sales, but I'm also going to put one in there for mailing list signups just to get people to read the prequel and then onto my list. So I'll be making 4 to 6 more ads in probably the next 20 minutes, but I wanted to show you a little bit about how these performed. So here's a look at the ad and what people would see on Facebook. This one performed very, very well. They can see sort of what they're getting. I've got my little funny quote here about the author's totally biased friend. And that's performing. I tried other ads that had different text and they were not nearly as successful. So I'm going to keep experimenting with this. You will see probably at least one more Facebook ads segment in a week or 2 to let you know how it's evolved. And I'll keep showing you sort of my trial and error, because really that's what Facebook ads are, trial and error. And they can be expensive trial and error, but when you find that secret sauce where you've got ads that work for you, they can really pay off. So hopefully that part is helpful. And again, we'll learn a little bit more about Facebook ads later on in this series. Okay, so the recap for the first week of the launch. It is Tuesday at 8:26 a.m., so I am on day 8 of this launch. You can see the number of sales started, at 125, that was mostly pre-orders, spiked up to 542, and then you can see it kind of gradually trickling down. And I'm hoping the equilibrium is going to be right around 100 copies a day. That seems to be, over the last several days, what I'm seeing. You can also see the pages read, which blows me away, has gotten up to about 35,000 a day. I don't know how long it can sustain that. The longer the better. I've already had well over 100,000 page reads, which means I'm going to have a very, very good month financially. So sales-wise, the book is doing great. It's doing far better than I could have expected. And while it is trending downward and I'm still waiting for it to find that equilibrium, it would have to slip pretty far for it not to be absolutely amazing. So looking at the product page, you can see I've already gotten 22 reviews with a 4.7 average, and that's in a week. So that's 3 reviews a day, which I'm more than happy with. So hopefully we'll get up into the 3 digits in the next month or 2. But yeah, very happy with that. And then the rank down here, so I peaked at number 200. That was as high as I got in the store. But even a week later, after going back to full price, I'm still number 662. So each day it's been losing a little bit of rank. We'll go ahead and take a look at Author Central. For those of you not familiar, Amazon has a site called Author Central that will allow you to track your author rank or the sales rank for a given book. So I'm going to sales rank, then we're going to take a look at Destroyer. and you can see sort of how the rank is going. So because it's improved so much, this looks like a straight line almost. It started down here during the pre-order at about 62,000 and then gradually worked its way up, and then we hit 229 at the end of one day. And so you can see it stayed right around 200 for a couple of days. This is when it was 99 cents, still 99 cents. This was the first day that I made it 299, so it slipped down to 400, still in the low 400s, still in the low 400s, and now here we are at, 660. So there's been a little bit of a slip, but we're still in the top 1,000, which was my goal, and I'm hoping I can keep it in the top 1,000 for the entire month, which I would not have dreamed possible. The progress has been insane. One last great takeaway from this is mailing list signups. So I put a very prominent reader magnet in the front of the book for the prequel Exiled. In the last 2 days of March after it launched, I got 129 subscribers. Here we are on April 5th, and this month I already have 138 more. So in a week, I've seen over 250 mailing list subscribers for Void Wraith. I have other lists as well, and one of those is my fiction list from the website. So it's people that go to the website and sign up for the mailing list. I've had another 50 of those. That one's just trucking right along. So having a large launch is great for building your long-term platform. Anyway, that's a good look at the progress of the book for this week. You will see another video next week detailing kind of what's changed between now and then. That one's going to be a little bit more Facebook heavy because that's most of the advertising I'm doing at this time. Anyway, thank you so much for being along for this launch. I apologize for this video being longer than usual, but given that I was at Smarter Artist and had a lot to talk about, I felt it was warranted. So see you next week.